In my last video, I talked about friendships at work, and especially as a manager, things to consider when you are going to be friends with employees, or to understand that some employees don't want to make friends at work, and some of the considerations and boundaries in your words and in your actions if you're going to be friends with some employees more than others. But in following up, I wanted to touch on a similar topic, and that's loneliness at work. And I've talked before about how the research shows that a manager impacts an employee's health more than their therapist or even doctor. Now that sinks in, and I've looked at that so many times, and it still affects me, but it makes sense. Because how much of our days, weeks, years, and life are spent in that work environment? And the manager has so much control, more than HR does day to day, more at times than a CEO might, but how your team dynamic is and the work that you have with your manager, when you are that manager, you're impacting your employees. Now, the topic of loneliness at work, I'll talk about it in two ways. One is to have an understanding that some people do not want to come to work and have friendships. But my hope that people can come and not feel so isolated and alone. The second is, as a manager, what you can do to foster more connection at work, to avoid those feelings of loneliness. Now first, the topic of friendships at work and that some people just want to come to work, get their job done, and leave. And I understand that. You might tell from my content, I'm pretty much an extrovert. In every place I've worked, I've actually built pretty deep and lasting friendships, people that I still keep up with. So it did take me personally time to realize that a lot of people don't want that type of environment, or a lot of people have gone through experiences where they were friends with someone and then something happened, like maybe their boss, and all of a sudden they were let go or got a bad performance review, or they had friendships at work that were made complicated. And so sometimes people, as a defense mechanism, will come to work and not want to develop any type of relationships. And I think it's perfectly acceptable. People don't have to want to come and take part in icebreakers, and so things like that, and I'll talk about that in the manager section. But when you look now at social media, there's so much content feeding into this idea that everyone is out to get you at work. From your boss to HR, to your colleagues, to the CEOs, that all of those people have your interests not only not in mind, but their interests always looking to trump yours. I see this content all the time, and I actually, even though I put content on social media, I actually intentionally limit how much I look at it because I see these things, and sometimes it actually gets me down. But when you see this content, some of it is true. There are situations where you have people that just are out to ruin someone's day, and it's best to steer clear. But some of the content I think is really damaging when it suggests, again, that everyone is out to get you. A lot of times I think people at work are bringing so much. You never have an idea of what someone has gone through before they've shown up to work that day or that night, depending on their shift. You have absolutely no idea. And so this idea of feeding into it, that everyone else out to get you, I think can be incredibly damaging. And so I think, my hope, as I said, is that people can understand that over time, there can be connections that are built. You don't have to want to come and celebrate and be part of every personal detail or share any of that. But I think there's a lot of people that are coming to work and that have enough going on in their life that's really hard that they do want to come and have some greater moments. In the law, for example, when I've worked in the law, some of the best moments I've had have been those interactions with colleagues, because at times we're dealing with really difficult things. I'd said that being a lawyer and even in HR can be like being a situational janitor. And so when you can have relationships with other people and commiserate, it can help. The same in the healthcare profession, in the ER departments, whether you have the nurses that have some of the humor to cope with what you're seeing day to day, or teachers being able to commiserate with each other. And so building up some of those bonds I think is really important. And so that's one of my notes, is that in social media, you frequently see these comments that talk about how everyone is out to get you and out to protect others. Often it's people that aren't equipped to do the tools of their job, whether it's HR that hasn't gotten training, or a manager that just is trying not to get fired. Rarely are they going out of their way to try to bring you down, but often it's that they don't know what to do better. So my second point, for managers, your team is likely bringing a lot of things with them in their personal life, with their family, things like that to work. And so you don't need to try to go and be everyone's friend or solve all of their problems. But you have a huge impact on what their experience is going to be like, how productive they are at work, what they get done, how they choose to stay at your organization, whether they want to look elsewhere. But it's also going to impact the person that your employees are when they go home, whether it's to their own dinner, to their families, to their friends. If they're sitting around the dinner table and they have kids, what do their kids think about you and your leadership? So simple things that you can do to foster that kind of connection can be, if you're in an in-person environment, not just brushing by and walking through, but stopping to say hello to people. Because I can tell you, people that work in a cube or a desk or an office and see the boss go by without saying anything often think in their mind, boy, they really just don't care about me. When you might have a ton on your mind and you're trying to get through it. But stop and have those conversations and build that connection. The same is in remote environments. If you do have Zoom, just checking on people and not with a message that says, hey, ... where people might be afraid of what's coming next from the boss. But just a note to check in and say, hey, I hope you have a good day. And if you have some sort of positive recognition, like a specific thing to say to that person, rather than just, hey, good job, because people don't know what you mean. By dropping those comments from time to time, that can make all the difference. If you're in a field type environment, like if you're on your feet, in a restaurant, in healthcare, talking to the people around you and just having that positive moment. Hey, have a good weekend. Hey, how are you doing? Questions like that don't necessarily go into asking personal details that they may not want to share, but simple words of building that connection can make all the difference. Again, in how long that person stays at your organization, how they work, but who that person is when they leave. And those are things as a manager that you can do. And sometimes people will worry, as a manager, I need to have this persona. And I talk about it a lot because I think people do have this fear that as you rise in management, you need to be seen only being friends with other managers or commiserating with employees. You want people to see you with leadership. But bringing that positive leadership where you can work and get the most out of employees by being a genuine person to them, that can accomplish business goals, which is part of your job, but it can also have really positive impacts. And so as I got on in my life, and I know a lot of leaders do, and all employees do, you start reflecting back and thinking, what have I spent time on? And a lot of people will say, I don't know that I wish I'd been more gruff to my employees, but I probably could have been a little kinder. And so not being, a saccharine or having to have, daily check-ins at the same time where you reach out something, but having really specific ideas in your mind of I'm going to welcome someone, ask them questions, and be a genuine person to them, those are things that you can do as a manager. So remembering that. Loneliness is a very, very real thing, and especially in America, even globally, there are real mental health challenges that happen at work. And so when you can stop in and check in on someone, not only does it accomplish business goals, which is your job as a leader, but can have really positive impacts, that person and their family and their friends will appreciate the person that you are for them. So that's my message for this week.